we're pulling back the curtain on a part of CMMC that still feels like a black box for most contractors, the assessment itself. You've spent months implementing controls, documenting policies, and preparing your systems for CMMC Level 2 compliance. But when the certified third-party assessor organization, the C3PAO, actually shows up, what really happens? What will they ask for? How do they evaluate your controls? And just how thin is the line between met and not met? Most contractors don't know, but today you'll see it firsthand. We're fortunate to have with us Fernando Machado, Managing Principal and CISO at CyberSec Investments. Fernando is a lead certified CMMC assessor, an authorized C3PAO, and one of the foremost experts on the process. With more than 15 years of DoD cybersecurity experience and assessments across Army, Navy, and Air Force contractors, he literally wrote the book on understanding CMMC. In this session, inside the C3PAO process preparing for your assessment, Fernando will give you something no other CMMC CON presentation has offered before, a live mock assessment. You'll see exactly what assessors expect to see in your documentation, how they conduct interviews and systems testing, and the common mistakes that can derail your certification.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fernando Machado, the Managing Principal and CISO at CyberSec Investments. I'm an authorized CMMC third-party assessment organization, and I myself am a lead CMMC certified assessor. And we're located in Melbourne, Florida. And today's presentation is going to talk about the CMMC assessment process. Now, before we begin, there's a couple of important definitions that are in the CMMC assessment process document, or the CAP. The first one being what's called the authorized certifying official. And this is going to be the designated official by the C3PAO that's registered with the Cyber AB, who is eligible to issue those CMMC Level 2 certificates of status. The next definition that we need to keep in mind is what a lead CCA is. A lead CCA is the lead CMMC certified assessor who will be leading the assessment team on behalf of the C3PAO. The next definition is the OSC point of contact, and this is going to be the individual either by the contractor or by somebody that the contractor appoints that is going to be responsible for that daily coordination and liaison between the contractor and the assessment team. And last but not least, the quality assurance individual, and this is going to be the CMMC assessor that is going to review the quality assurance of the assessment team, but they're not allowed to be on the assessment. So this would be the third assessor assigned to the contractor. Now, the CMMC assessment process document, or as commonly known as the CAP, can be downloaded from the cyberab.org website. So when you go to the website, this is what the website looks like. And right here at the very top, you'll see the click here to download the CMMC assessment process document, or the CAP. So the CMMC assessment process has 4 phases. Each phase leads into the next one with the pre-assessment, which then leads into assessing conformity of the requirements, completing and reporting the assessment results, and then finally issuing a CMMC certificate of status and closing out any potential POAMs. So the overall timeline between a scoping call and pre-coordination call to the week of a contractor's assessment, at least the way that CyberSec does it, is approximately about 6 weeks apart. So in phase 1, when we conduct the pre-assessment, one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to assign a lead CCA to your assessment as well as a CCA. And then there's going to be a third assessor that you're not going to see that's going to be acting in the quality assurance capacity. One of the first things that your C3PAO is going to want to do is they're going to want to review your system security plan and confirm availability of evidence. So they're going to want to see your system security plan, any relevant policies and procedures, and any artifacts. Now remember, at this time, the assessment team is not looking through your documentation to see that if it's good enough. They just want to make sure that you have enough documentation there that in their mind, you're prepared to go through an assessment. Another thing that a C3PAO is going to be doing is they're going to be evaluating if there are any external service providers as part of your environment. One of the first things that we're going to look at is if there are any cloud service providers that process, store, or transmit CUI. And if they are, they either need to be FedRAMP authorized at FedRAMP moderate, or they need to be FedRAMP moderate or equivalent. And here you can see the memorandum that was put out by the Department of Defense on December 21st, 2023, where they establish what constitutes a FedRAMP moderate equivalency. And here, in order to be considered FedRAMP moderate equivalent, the cloud service provider has to have 100% compliance with the latest FedRAMP moderate security control baselines. That has to be conducted by a FedRAMP 3PAO, and then they have to present that body of evidence to the contractor. So once the assessment team determines your readiness and they've reviewed your system security plan and you have policies and procedures and artifacts, we can now go and have a go or no-go decision. So if you have enough evidence there, they'll either tell you it's a no-go, which means that the assessment team has to upload your pre-assessment form into EMAS, or they say it's a go, it gets uploaded into EMAS anyway. So whether you're ready or not, the assessment team and the C3PAO have to upload the pre-assessment form into EMAS, which potentially now brings to light your organization to the Department of Defense. Once phase one is completed, we now go into what's called phase two, and it's assessing conformity to the security requirements, primarily NIST 800, 171, and 171A. A typical assessment schedule would look like this. Right, so on a Monday through Thursday cadence with Friday reserved as needed. And here the assessment team will tell you that each of these days, the assessment team will conduct these certain security control families. One of the first things that the contractor has to understand is when we conduct that in brief, there's a couple of things that we have to do as the C3PAO. So we first have to record official meeting minutes and document any questions and answers that the contractor has. And this is going to be led by the lead CMMC certified assessor. Once that's done, the lead assessor is going to introduce the assessment team and then confirm the assessment scope that is provided to him by the affirming official and the OSC point of contact. We're going to review the assessment schedule, which I showed you guys earlier, and then we're going to inform the contractor of their rights to appeal the assessment results in case things go south. One of the things that we also have to do is talk about non-statistical sampling. So for example, let's say we have a contractor that has 15 sites. It would not make any sense for the assessment team nor for the contractor to say that all 15 sites are going to be individually visited unless certain circumstances arise. So this is where the CMMC assessment process gives us the latitude of what's called non-statistical sampling, where the assessment team can say, you know, in this instance, we've got 4 sites. Rather than visiting all 4, if they're all under the same system security plan, we could just say, we're going to visit 2 of the 4 sites. So as we're going through the assessment, at the end of each day, we have what's called daily checkpoints. So this is where the assessment team will say, hey, listen, we've assessed these controls. They're currently trending as met, not met, or we're currently leaving them open pending any additional clarification or documentation from you. So if a security control is marked as not met, we can do what's called a security requirement reevaluation. So a security requirement that is marked as not met may be reevaluated during the course of the assessment and up to 10 business days after, provided you meet the 3 criteria. 1, that you provide additional evidence to demonstrate you've met that security requirement. 2, it doesn't change or limit the effectiveness of the other controls that have been marked as met. And 3, it's prior to the C3PAO submitting the CMMC assessment findings report. Once phase 2 is completed, it now goes into phase 3, where we complete and report the assessment results. And just like the in brief, we also have to conduct meeting minutes on the out brief with the name of the contractor, the cage codes that all tie up to the HLO or the highest level owner. And then there's going to be a final determination of either met, not met, or non-applicable for each of the security requirements. Once that's completed, the assessment team is going to ask you to hash all of your artifacts that were part of the assessment. And we want you to provide the names of all the artifacts and return all of the values of the hashing algorithm, as well as the hashing instance. So once that's done, that is provided to the C3PAO, which then gets put into your CMMC assessment report. Once that's completed, the QA is going to validate that the assessment results is all documented, all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and then someone from the C3PAO will upload the information into EMAS, and then EMAS will populate into the Supplier Performance Risk System, or SPRS, usually within one business day. Last but not least, if the contractor qualifies for a CMMC certificate, they're going to be issued one of two certificate types. They're either going to be issued a CMMC Level 2 final certificate, or they're going to be issued a CMMC Level 2 conditional certificate. So a CMMC Level 2 final certificate would be that the contractor met all 110 requirements on the first go, and that there are no open POAMs at the end of the assessment. However, if there are eligible POAM items that the contractor has to close out, then the contractor will be issued a CMMC Level 2 conditional certificate. So in order for it to be eligible for a POAM, the contractor has to do several things, right? One, the assessment score divided by the total number of the CMMC Level 2 requirements has to be greater than or equal to than 80%, or 88 out of the 110 controls. Two, none of the security requirements in the POAM can have a point value greater than 1, meaning if there's a control that is a 3 or 5 valued control, that would not be eligible for a POAM. And 3, these lists of subset of 1 valued controls cannot be listed on the POAM. So if you meet all 3 criteria, you will be issued a CMMC Level 2 conditional certificate, and then you will have 180 days to close out those remaining items. And so today we're going to talk about a CMMC simulated assessment. And one of the things that we're going to do, I'm going to be acting in the role of a contractor and acting in a role of an assessor of what some of the common questions an assessor may ask during an assessment. And I'll be flipping back and forth with certain hats so that you don't get confused, so that you understand which role I'm playing at that point. So let's get started. Alrighty, Mr. Contractor. Today we're going to discuss the first control, limit system access to authorized users, processes acting on behalf of authorized users, and devices including other systems. So for 311 Alpha, can you please identify how authorized users are identified? Certainly, Mr. Assessor. So this is our system security plan, and we identify our authorized users via the onboarding checklist, which includes what's called the information account request form for our general users with no administrative privileges. And then we also have the privileged user information account request form for our privileged users. And you can see that right here at the top, as part of like the additional documentation that we provide, we have that onboarding checklist. All right, great. Can you please show me what this onboarding checklist looks like? All right, no problem. So this is what our current onboarding checklist looks like. And you can see, as one of the things that I had talked about in our system security plan, is we do what's called the information system account request form. So here is one of our employees, Mr. Alex Hartford, that we decided to onboard recently. Here is a list of artifacts that we keep as a prerequisite to system access. And here you could see Mr. Alex Hartford completed the IS account request form. The IS account request form has him requesting a new account in our GCC High environment. And once that was completed, it was sent over to our system manager. And our system manager approved the request to have his account created. Additionally, one of the things that I wanted to show you is, as a prerequisite to system access, our employees have to complete required training. And here are copies of Mr. Hartford's training certificates. Great, that explains that. Now, can you please tell me about your processes acting on behalf of authorized users? So CyberSec Investments does not employ processes acting on behalf of authorized users, because services like Azure Active Directory and Endpoint Manager do not run on behalf of authorized users, since it runs in the operating system in the system context. Great. Can you tell me on how you identify authorized devices? Yep, no worries. So devices authorized to connect to the system have to be identified via our change management request, and then those approved devices are then placed on our hardware software inventory. Great. Can you please show us an example of a recent device that was approved and added to your hardware software inventory? No problem. So here is a change request that we had recently, where we recently added our laptop that we called CSI Laptop 8 to the CyberSec Investments environment. And you can see that it was approved on October 31st, 2024. Outstanding. Now, can you please tell me how system access is limited to those authorized users? No problem. So system access is limited to those authorized users via our Azure Active Directory and Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So here's Mr. Alex Hartford, and you can see this is one of our active users. And if you recall from the form before, he filled out the IS account request form and requested an account with no administrative access. And you can see here's his account, and we demonstrate that he has no administrator access as part of his role. Great. And we already talked about with 311 Bravo that you do not employ processes acting on behalf of authorized users. Can you tell me a little bit about how system access is limited to authorized devices? Absolutely. So system access is limited to those authorized devices via Azure Active Directory and Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So as we stated earlier, for our change management request, we added that CSI Laptop 8. And you could see that at the time that that device was approved on that change request, it was added that same exact day on October 31st. Additionally, we also employ what's called conditional access policies in our environment, which means as a condition to access the resources that we provide, these policies are then forced onto those endpoints. And one of the things that we require is a baseline of requiring device compliance for those workstations. Yeah, that's interesting. Can you please expand on that? Yep, no problem. So when we click into that, here you can see the baseline for requiring device compliance, and you can see that access is granted, and it's only granted if the device is marked as compliant with all of the other conditional access policies and other policies that we put in place. Thank you so much. That concludes 311. Thanks for joining today's session, and I hope that this gave you a clearer view of what assessors can expect and how to prepare for your assessment. Please remember that CMMC is not just about passing your assessment one time, but it's about building a continuous monitoring program. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out, and I hope to see you guys again.
Big thanks to Fernando for pulling back the curtain on the C3PAO process. Now you know exactly what assessors expect, what trips contractors up, and how to keep your certification on track.